Here's a special important message.
Hello, welcome to episode 7 of We Are the Road Crew, a podcast about the world of live music and what goes on behind the scenes, behind the stage, throughout the world of live music. My name is Stephen Hill. I'm your host. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hopefully you're familiar with what the show is now. If you're just coming in first time, if you're coming in due to your interest in today's guest, which I think quite a few people will be because he's a very, very fascinating man, then as I kind of just hinted at, this podcast is about the world of live music and gigs and shows. And, I've always been a massive fan of going to gigs, and I've always been fascinated in how those gigs actually come together. And on this podcast, we get people from the backstage, the tour managers, the lighting people. I've said the lighting people because this week's one is a lighting person, the guitar techs, the people who make the sound, who pull the tickets, whatever they do to help get your favourite bands on stage. We love to talk to them. And this week we have a guest all the way from the United States of America in Los Angeles. His name is Paul Dexter. He is the principal designer for Masterworks Lighting, but that only tells a very, very small part of the story. He's been working in the world of kind of lighting design for, well, longer than I've been alive, which I probably won't put it to him quite like that when I speak to him, but he has, and he's worked with legitimately some of the biggest names in the world of music, from Motley Crue, Ronnie James Dio, Black Sabbath, Elton John, and even the Bolshoi Ballet at the Royal Albert Hall. So I am very, very excited to talk to him and talk to him about the world of illumination of live music. So it should be a really, really fascinating chat, both in terms of the stories that he surely will have about some of the most, recognisable names in the world of music. And also, we haven't really spoken to someone who designs and kind of puts together the lighting shows for bands. So I'm looking forward to delving into that world and finding out exactly how it works. So without further ado, I'm going to say, please leave us a review. Follow us at Road Crew Pod on Twitter. Find us on Facebook. And I'll see you on the other side. But for now, here is me talking to Mr. Paul Dexter, all the way from Los Angeles. Paul Dexter, how are you, my friend? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. I said my quite ominous first words to you I've been reading up on you, because it's been a hell of a journey that you've been on in your life, and I'm looking forward to kind of delving into the deepest, darkest parts of it. But in general, what a story it's been, just as a sort of opening gambit. Is that fair to say? You feel like you've lived a life of many things?
Yeah, I'll be happy when I go. I'll be happy.
Well, I think, because there's so much to get into, we should start by chatting about how you kind of first experienced live music. This is how we usually start off the podcast, asking people about their sort of first experiences, their formative experiences with live music. So do you remember the first artist that you actually witnessed playing live, and do you remember the impact that had on you?
I can't exactly remember who. There's been a lot of them. I went to the Forum here in Los Angeles to see Chicago.
Right.
Love that. I saw the Moody Blues there. But I think, going back, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention was probably one of my first live shows. And the reason for that was because my stepbrother, who I was living with at the time, was very good friends with the road manager, Dick Barber.
Right.
And so I handed Frank Zappa a guitar from the stage when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a wow, because he was a pretty charismatic person.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why you'd remember, especially seeing someone like Frank Zappa. I mean, how were those days kind of felt like kind of the Wild West? Do you know what I mean? It was still the sort of formative years of rock music and rock and roll as we now know it. And Frank Zappa was as outrageous and outlandish and as much of an outlaw as pretty much anyone. What was it like to actually witness that kind of creative tour de force that was Frank Zappa all those years ago?
I think you just said it. It was a tour de force.
Yeah.
The feelings that you get when you see something like that, the energy that you feel, certainly was the starting point for my passion for music, for being backstage, for having this a part of my life, always.
Did it kind of make you believe, I mean, handing a guitar, there's, you know, we've spoken to a few people and they will tell me about their first ever live show, but actually having a guitar in your hand and then suddenly Frank Zappa's taking it from you and he's on stage playing it in front of all these people, did that kind of make you go, oh, I can do this? Is that a point where you thought, maybe I should sort of hang around more?
Yeah, the penny had not really dropped right then. It was just exciting to be there and exciting to be around that. And certainly, you know, looking at album covers and listening to music and then finally seeing this person was quite a charge. But I think the real penny drop for me, I was with a high school gymnasium concert, a local concert with a group called Redbone. Okay. Redbone, you remember them?
No, I've never heard of them.
They had a couple of hits, and one of them was Come and Get Your Love, which is the beginning track for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, right, okay.
Come and Get Your Love, and it's been used on a lot of commercials since then.
Yeah.
But that song was a hit on the radio when I went and saw them. I was 16 years old, and I went by myself. About halfway through the concert, I went up to the very top of the gymnasium stands, and I swear to God, it was as if a little angel went tink, and there was fairy dust that went all over me and said, "This is what you're going to do."
Wow.
And the next day, I went over to Dick Barber's house and said, "How do I do it? Let me in. Get me in this." And I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And he goes, "I don't know how. I don't know how to tell you to do it. Just be in it, you know." And even to this day, if somebody wants to get in the music business, in the backstage theatrical world, really, you just need a wrench and a good attitude, and you're good to go.
So what did you do? What was your next step after that? Because I've read something about 42 pineapple cans and a sort of homemade lighting rig. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, of course. That was through Dick Barber, who he had gone to a Rolling Stones concert, and this was in 72, and he had seen Chipmunk, who was their now famous lighting designer. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Look, Paul, if you want to do this, let's build a lighting system." So at that time, I was working as a apprentice meat cutter in a local store.
Right.
And I'd saved up quite a bit of money because, you live at home or you don't have much, spend it on. So I say, and we went to the junkyard and got these pineapple cans, and I got the best ones too, just right off the top, right. All shiny and everything.
Yeah.
We painted them black. We had 1-inch straps that went around the can, and so you could maneuver it from right to left and up and down, hand tilt.
Right.
Put gels in front of it, and in those days it was the real gel. And I found this out the hard way because I put the gels in the garage one day and decided to clean it out and sprayed it with water, and the gels just started to melt all down the side of the garage floor.
Right, okay.
They were real gels. Yeah. And so, that's how that started. I gathered 42 cans. They were on elevating trees. We lifted them up, put a half-penny nail through them to get them higher, and they were about 12 feet, and created my own control for it. And I went and rehearsed every night with the band. Right. Every night.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what it was about lighting. And I mean, you mentioned actually one of the things that sort of pinged in my head as you said it was, you said looking at album covers. And obviously the way we think about music initially, always, even in, when you think about hearing a song at a live show, the first thing you think of obviously is the sonics, is the sound, is your ears. What was it about, and how important is the visual aspect of music to you, and what kind of made you go down that path rather than tuning guitars or doing sound engineering or any of those other things you could have done?
Well, I was a musician. Mm-hmm. I played all through growing up in elementary school and high school, and I was in the jazz band and the concert band and the pep band at football games. and played tenor sax.
Right.
And so I understood music. I understood the structure of it. And this was just a way to interpret music with lighting, because I realized that being a musician and being in the band wasn't really my thing. I just was attracted to this, and we could go back and try and figure out why. I don't know. But, putting sugar cube castles up and wiring them up with batteries, and when I was younger, putting electronic car sets together at Christmas time, I just dug it. I just loved that part. I didn't really want to be in front of the camera. I just like being behind it.
Okay. You started kind of rehearsing. You've got this kind of makeshift sort of homemade lighting rig, and you are what, that age? So this is, as I read it, 1970 at the age of 16. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Right. Okay. And then can you talk about what happened for the next 2 years? Because what I've read, within 2 years at the age of 18, you were asked to tour with Elvis Presley. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That was kind of the end point, a very colorful part of writing a bio. I didn't actually tour with Elvis, but I was asked to tour with him. And leading up to that, I have a story for that if you're interested. Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, your reputation, something's happened in your reputation from going and stealing a bunch of pineapple cans to being asked to go on tour with Elvis Presley. I was like, what has happened in those 2 years to get you to that point? So yeah, fire away.
Yeah, well, it's not just meeting people along the way that things occur. And so the band that I got, going back to Dick Barber and being road manager for Zappa, I convinced him to produce a band that my friends were in.
Right, okay.
And it was an all-original band called Central, and this is the band that I rehearse with every night with the lighting system.
Sure.
And so I convinced him to come and have a look and see if he could help get a record deal, get promotion, help the band get recognized for the great songs and talent that they were. And so we took that and entered a battle of the bands, which was out in Riverside, California. I think the prize was $600 and you got to play with Rare Earth or something like that at the show.
Yeah.
And so during that show at Riverside Raceway, I was with another lighting designer with the company that provided the lights, which, by the way, was only 5 follow spots. That was all I had.
Right.
But because I was so familiar with the music, I was able to call follow spots for the very first time. And we won that battle of the bands, by the way. And the woman who was providing the lighting was with a company with James Moody, who and her started, which was called Sundance Lighting.
Right, okay.
So at that moment, when the show was over, she goes, I could really use you to go and tour with Elvis. Let me know.
God.
So at 18, I was going, well, what should I do? So I just kept in contact with her, and push came to shove, and I met James Moody, who really helped me start my first tour and start with a real concert lighting company.
Right, okay.
That was 1973.
1973.
So the first thing I did is I went on tour with War and a band called Climax Blues Band.
Okay.
English guy. Yeah.
Any regrets about not getting a chance to do the lighting for Elvis?
No.
No?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, I did at the time. I thought, boy, did I blow it. But as it happened, the path was just laid out for me to do other things and be involved on a different level.
Yeah. So you think maybe not taking that and then going in a slightly different path has given you longevity, whereas possibly it may not have done. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? But I certainly have gradually climbed the ladder. I guess if I was in a corporate business, that you call it a corporate ladder or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've certainly started off being a lighting designer and a lighting director. I wasn't really starting off, putting plugs together. That just came later for me, but I was a lighting director first.
That's amazing. So you know, at that point, let's go back to kind of where you were, 1973, first tour. How did your kind of career progress from that point on? I mean, at that age, at a kind of young age, you're essentially, like you said, you know, you started as a designer basically, and I guess there's a lot of learning to be had and a lot of learning on the job to be had as well. Tell us about those kind of years, and, you know, obviously the 1970s are a very fascinating era for music, all kinds and many different genres. So what are the kind of potted highlights and important moments that happened to you during that decade, would you say?
Well, my first tour was Billy Preston.
Oh, wow, cool.
In 1973. And I mean, just to show you how far production has come, or ideas for stage sets. I mean, right now it's just super fancy, out of control, you know, but then I was in the warehouse in Eagle Rock, California, and we were putting together a little sign that said Billy on it. And so Jim Moody comes to me and has a 4x8 piece of plywood and takes a pencil and writes Billy on it and gives me a bunch of wires and chaser lights and said, okay, wire it up. And I had to drill all the holes and wire, you know, all this sequence of sign that said Billy on it. That was my introduction to set design, I guess.
That's a big show for 1970 something, right? That's quite a, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he had a song called Will It Go Round in Circles?
Yeah. And
it was big on the college circuit. We played a lot of college dates. Being that young, I was on campus with all these college girls. I thought I was just the business. You know, nice. You get the swag T-shirts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We were with the band.
With the band.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's good. I was going to ask you actually about how. Sorry to kind of deviate from the question a little bit, but
okay.
It feels like a good thing to put in, a good moment to put in now. When did you start to realise that, you know, you mentioned the word Billy behind, you know, the artist as he's playing, and that's kind of, oh look, that's the show. When did you notice things becoming more complex, bands wanting more in terms of the way they looked on stage, how they wanted to be? Do you know what I mean? Because it feels like when you get to the 80s, that is very much a thing. Do you know what I mean? But did you sort of see that coming? Was that a slow build, or was suddenly, you know, the excess of the 80s, one day everyone went, we must have smoke machines and lights and, you know, pyrotechnics and stuff?
Yeah, let me digress just a little bit. I mean, that kind of production was started, you know, in the late 60s. If I can make a shameless plug for my book that I wrote with James Moody, it's called Concert Lighting, The Art and Business of Entertainment Lighting. Mm-hmm. And within that, you know, I discovered that ground zero for lighting and production was really at the Fillmore East, the Billy Graham's Fillmore East.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Chipmunk earlier. He was the lighting designer for the Fillmore East and what then became a Fillmore West in San Francisco. But in those days, you got everywhere from the Doors and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Yeah, of course.
The list goes on and on. But that's where the production side of it and the more than just illumination side started with Joshua White's Oil Light Show behind the band. So at that time, nobody was actually touring with any kind of production like that. Mm. They would go to the Fillmore West and they would just get it because that was part of it.
Yeah.
But the reason that the Fillmore East stopped or their popularity sank was because all those bands had to go to arenas to play. That was the natural progression. They started off in this theater, and then touring started with production. Yeah. I mean, touring was going on in the 50s, but not like this, where you started carrying production.
Yeah.
So I saw a gradual increase in the popularity of production touring, and it definitely was right in the thick of it. So it just became more and more lighting, more physical sets because they were playing bigger places. Mm. So Sundance Lighting at that time started doing Diana Ross and Rod Stewart and Marvin Gaye and Rory Gallagher, and again, the list goes on and on. So I was right in Hollywood with this lighting company that was burgeoning with work.
Right.
It was cool.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. It sounds very cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I was looking at some of the artists that you work with, and, we should definitely speak about a few of them. But one of the ones I wanted to ask you about was Elton John. You worked with Elton John?
Yes.
Yeah. That would have been, what sort of era are we talking about when you and Elton were working together?
That was 1988 through 90.
Oh, right. Okay. So a little bit later on. I was going to ask you about the kind of outlandish costumes and the 1970s boom of Elton John, I guess, through to the early 80s when he was wearing these insane costumes. Everyone remembers the kind of Dodger Stadium outfit particularly, but I guess they've kind of been brought back into the public consciousness a bit more with the sort of release of the Rocket Man film. What was Elton like to work with? I love Elton John. I absolutely love him, but he's got a reputation for being a fairly difficult person to work with. How did you find Elton?
Well, I didn't find him difficult. I think he gets him in situations where I don't know. He has to be Elton. Elton's royalty. Let's face it. The guy started off with such mega success, and right away, from the early days, like Rocket Man depicted with the Troubadour on Sunset Boulevard, they got him in there, and he played there quite a bit. That whole scene that was in Rocket Man was pretty accurate. The actor who played Elton, I think, got him.
Yeah, Taron Egerton.
Pretty good.
Yeah, great.
But the thing is that you speak about an artist like that, and the first thing that we all want to hear is, the tantrums. He had a film a little while ago. I think it was called Tiaras and Tantrums.
That's
or something
right.
that.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
the name of it?
Yeah, Tantrums and Tiaras. Yeah.
Yeah. I got it backwards.
Yeah.
So there were some scenes like that, but I never really was on the end of any of those things. For me, it was, you are in charge of lighting and staging, and let me, just do your thing. It's all you.
Oh, wow.
And the sky was the limit, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much the sky was the limit. So, the first tour I did, there was quite a reputable designer who designed the stage set, and I just came in, I designed the lighting for it. And after a while, it was time for a change. And so I got a watercolor artist in New York, because we played Madison Square Gardens. I think it set a record at 9 nights. I'm sure Billy Joel has eclipsed that by now.
Yeah.
But then it was 9 nights at Madison Square Garden. So during the day, I would visit this watercolor artist, and I drew out my design for a new stage set. And so going back to your question about the flamboyant costumes and everything else, when I started with them, the album was called Reg Strikes Back. Reg Strikes Back was when he donned all of that feather boa stuff and the glitter, and wore very pretty Versace suits, and it was distinguished, still showy, but still distinguished. And so that whole look that was created for him was for Reg Strikes Back.
Right, okay. That's interesting you say that he gave you kind of carte blanche to do whatever you felt like you need to do, because in my head, Elton John always seems like somebody who... It's not even about the fact that, he's a quote-unquote a difficult character or a diva or whatever these other things have been put, against him, but just someone who has such a strong, clear, definite artistic vision of what they want to create that I had in my mind. He would go, I want this light here, this needs to be on me at this point, I need to have that at this point, and I would have thought he would have been very kind of iron fisty about exactly what he wanted his show to look like, because it is, he's not a band, is he? He's Elton John. I know he has a band, obviously, but he's Elton John. Everyone's there to stare at him, and it's all everything is Elton John. So I'm quite interested and surprised to hear that.
Oh no, he was the consummate showman. I mean, on the contrary to what you were saying, it was me that went to him to try and extract information so that I could give more about what he was. But like you, super fan. Yeah. Love Funeral for a Friend, Into Love Lies Bleeding, I'm Still Standing. All the hits were all there, you know. And so it was me looking at this music and you know, I don't want to say I'm different from most lighting designers, but I certainly have had a formula that I've stuck to, which is I tear apart the songs. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I was a musician. I understand the music and music structure. So I would look at the lyrics. I would break the songs down. I would know precisely what I was going to do before I went in and started programming lights. Mm-hmm. And so it took a little bit longer, as it still does for me. I'm a video content designer a lot now, and that takes a long time too. But sure. That's another story. But this is why it came out that I would come to him to say, you know, he probably got tired of me showing up in the dressing room. I showed up in some embarrassing moments sometimes too, because I've
been reading his book, and it sounds like it was all quite a party that was happening back then.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fun person. I mean, I just remember this one scene in. Well, there's a few of them. Yeah. But what's coming through my head now? We were I believe in Houston or Dallas or something, and there was a band, a British group called Wet, Wet, Wet. Yeah, I think John Reed was also managing. Mm-hmm. So they opened the show. There's 15,000 people in the arena, and I'm in the dressing room, and Elton goes, "I'm not going on." So I'm going to the airport. So that for some reason the cars were parked just outside the dressing room. Yeah. So he actually went and got in the car and just waited in the car. It was freaking people out, you know. But this is what he did. It was just kind of, I think he just loved the game of being out, you know, could pull that stuff off.
Gotta love him. Gotta love him. Anyway, another band who have quite recently been in the news again, Motley Crue, for sort of similar reasons as well. The Dirt, the kind of the book that became the film, The Story of Motley Crue, which has led to the kind of recent reformation of Motley Crue. When did you work with Motley Crue? And I mean, this feels like, I feel like it's well-trodden ground, the story of Motley Crue and the kind of the levels of debauchery that they went through. What was it like working with Motley Crue on that level? And also, again, a very, very visual band, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. Well, they had, what was it? Ian Underwood, I think, was their designer for the tours that I worked with. Just trying to remember. I did two of them. One was called Theater of Pain in 1985. Yeah. And the other one was Girls, Girls, Girls in 1987. Yeah. Both of those shows were... I didn't actually tour with them in 85. I just did the design for it. Mm-hmm. But in 87, for Girls Tour, I was on the road with them. Yeah, they were a trip. I'm just trying to remember a good story with that one.
If you can remember it, you weren't there, right? That's one of those.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of good ones. The one that comes to mind is Vince Neil. And we were in the Bible Belt part of Mississippi or something. Mm-hmm. And before the band got there was this movement of Christian groups that wanted to cancel the concert and say all kinds of, bad things to make people not want to go. Of course, that just propelled the situation where people wanted to go, bad press being good press.
Of course.
So it comes to find out that it was down to this one person that was driving this whole thing. So imagine that the show is about to start, that the band is in the dressing room, the opening act is on, and then the guitar tech comes back into the dressing room and says to him, I saw the guy that started all of this. So they call me into the dressing room and they go, look, here's what's going to happen. After the third song or something like that, we're going to locate the guy. We'll tell you where it is. And so when I point him out, Vince talking to me, when I point him out, put all the spots on him.
Right. Oh, God.
So this was a big deal, you know. So, I mean, he was using curse words that I'm not going to use on this podcast. But
appreciate that.
Yeah. But he had him. And so, of course, that happened. And he got completely lit up at that moment. And the crowd just went nuts on him. I mean, he had to leave right away because they were upset.
I'm sure they were. That's hilarious. Well, what was he doing in the show? It seems really odd that he would be... I suppose we never found out, did we? That's one of life's little mysteries, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, as it happened, he was only about 15, 20 feet from me. It was easy to pick him out.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like, I mean, one of the most sort of infamous eras of rock, you know, the days when heavy metal was, you know, this monstrous demon in the 80s where it was this huge music and Motley Crue. And I know you also worked with Ozzy on the Diary of the Madman tour. Is that the one?
Yes, Diary of Madman, yes.
Yeah, that must have also been fairly interesting and experience as well.
Interesting is a good word for it.
Okay, well, do tell.
Well, I love Ozzy. I think he's great. He just had he's just a super funny guy.
Yeah.
You know, but with issues. The guy had issues, right? And I'll tell you something. If it wasn't for Sharon, he'd still be in a ditch somewhere in Birmingham, or gone from us. He really is who he is because of Sharon.
Sure.
I can say that, hand on heart. But let me think of something that he did that was really cool. Oh, the bat story. I've got that one. You know, there's...
Wow. That is one of the legendary stories in the history of popular culture. Were you there for that?
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, I'm interested to hear a kind of a first-hand account of it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I was out in the front of the house, obviously, because I was running the lighting console. Mm-hmm. And I believe Sharon was standing with me. But what happened was that some fan had thrown a bat on stage, and Ozzy thought it was a rubber bat.
Yeah.
And he put it in his mouth, and the bat was still alive, and the bat actually nipped him. And so, you know, after that was even more amusing because for rabies shots, for something like that, you have to have them in your knees and your stomach. Right. Super painful.
Yeah.
So it was the day after these shots, which came the drama, which was I think we were in Champaign, Illinois. And it was real interesting because Champaign, Illinois, the stadium there, it's a very shallow floor. Mm-hmm. And then the stadium seating went really high, like extreme incline. So instead of being on the floor, I had the lighting console at the top of this first deck, looking down on the stage at an angle. So before the show, Ozzy goes, shut it. I'm not going on. Swear to God. He's in too much pain. She goes, Ozzy, you have to go on. You have to go on. So long story short, he does go on. He plays the first 3 notes. He sings the first 3 words of the song Over the Mountain and collapses on the stage. And as I'm seeing it, I've got 6 follow spots on the guy laying on the stage in an S shape, you know, like sideways, an S shape, just laying there. And, you know, the rest of the band's kind of like playing and looking down, going, what are we going to do? And so they finished the song by themselves.
Right.
And after the song is over, everybody's stunned and doesn't know what to do. And the audience is talking amongst themselves.
He's still on the floor.
The next thing you know, you see two paramedics in white uniforms coming on stage with what do they call the
defibrillator?
Yeah, right. And so they put him on this little mobile cot, lift him up, and take him off stage. As he's going off stage, and the monitor engineer told me this later, Ozzy looks at him and gives him a wink. And off he goes.
What a bastard.
I thought there was going to be a riot or something, but I mean, everybody just left peacefully, and that was that. I mean, he would do that. He did that a couple of times. One time we loaded in a show in St. Louis, and the show was the most horrific load-in because you either had two choices. One, you could take it up on this little tiny elevator, outside elevator with really slow motors.
Yeah.
You could fit about 3 pieces of gear on it. Can you imagine?
Yeah, right.
Or you have to walk it from a block away up these ramps and through other buildings and before you get to its Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. We get the whole thing loaded in. At 5:00, we're told the show's canceled. So we had to go back and do a makeup date because Ozzy was drunk or didn't want to do it or something like that.
Oh, Ozzy, what a character. Again, you got, I mean, now it feels like if someone was trying to become the biggest star in the world and they did what you've just described, Elton John or Motley Crue or Ozzy Osbourne doing, I just don't think it would happen, would it? People would go, no, I'm not putting up with this. See you later, mate. Back to the day job. Record labels dropping you. Tour support's gone. You're out. But a different time. I want to ask you about why it was that, I believe in 1986 you moved to the United Kingdom from LA. Was that the year that you moved?
It was 1986. I met a girl.
Oh, yeah.
See, it's all about the love, man.
Always.
It's all about the love. And so I came to England 10 years. I stayed there. I had 2 children in England. And while I was there, the industry was really changing. It was kind of moving away. I mean, I was using moving lights and automated fixtures then, but things really started to ramp up with regards to the technology and stuff between that time and when I was there, 96. So I was off. I was keeping involved. I did some videos in London, and I did the Fuji TV stuff live from London. Yeah. And, did a few smaller tours with Ronnie Dio, probably a couple more, but just light stuff than what I've been doing. I mean, Elton John, we toured 18 months, go out 3 months, go home for a couple of weeks, go out more. Yeah. That's how we did it. Yeah. So I started a project there called Keys North, which was very ambitious to build an arena with a theater and a radio station and retail stores and shops and stuff on the other side. And I held 12 acres of land with the Teesside Development Corporation for 3 years. But that was right in 1991, which is the pinnacle of the recession. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was right there. And all of those guys up there in the Development Corporation were always worried about building a big white elephant there. And so it never came to fruition. But what they did build there was an office for Enron. And we know what happened to Enron. So they put their money behind them and not this big complex that I was proposing. But I got a lot of momentum with it.
Hindsight's a lovely thing, right?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
2020, right here.
Yeah, of course. But you also started Heritage Media while you were in the UK. Yeah. Which was a kind of more drawing on, I guess, audio things, audio drama, live concerts. I know you kind of sold on some stuff to the BBC, the Radio 4, I read. Tell us more about that and how that came about and kind of what
Heritage Media was actually born out of my connections with trying to start the project Keys North. Right. And so it attracted a certain, business movers and shakers. Mm-hmm. And so part of that was to create a radio station. And so we started this radio station idea and were successful with one called A1 Radio in Darlington. And we all had shares in it, and it eventually got eaten up by a larger conglomerate. But within that, Heritage Media, we traveled to America, my partner and I, to find radio content so that we could sell it and market it and create our own, cassette tapes of old radio shows, real famous ones.
Yeah.
And so part of that was we aired War of the Worlds, or Orson Welles' War of the Worlds on BBC Radio 4.
That was what I read. Yes, that's very cool.
And I also got Westwood One to provide, and we bought the rights to famous concerts, which played on BBC Radio 2, I believe, in a concert series there. And it was James Taylor, and that was a cool deal.
Yeah.
We signed a contract with him, and so I made, I was in North Yorkshire at the time, and I made several trips to London to sort this out and contracts, and it was a different experience for me.
That's interesting. It's a kind of interesting career trajectory. And I noticed you said you kind of maybe didn't do so much of the lighting design in the live. I mean, was it something that you missed, or was it something you just thought, well, I've done that and I've kind of worked with these people at the pinnacle, so I'll just dip my toe in and out a little bit more?
I mean, I loved what I did, but I was at that point fully prepared to just let it go and work on other things that would get me more in terms of satisfying my need to be in that business. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot. I learned how to write business plans. I learned how to write. First and foremost, it's harder, as you probably know, to be succinct than it is to be verbose.
Yeah.
So that...
I'll try. Yeah.
You're doing a good job, Steve.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So at what point, I mean, 10 years in the UK, what was the change that brought you back to the US, and how did you... I mean, I think we'll talk... You mentioned Ronnie James Dio. I do want to talk about Ronnie James Dio, but I might leave it for the minute. I mean, just what kind of happened next in the story, kind of getting you back to the US and getting you back on tours and into the lighting world?
Well, I became very frustrated because the projects weren't panning out as I'd hoped. And so that puts financial pressure on one, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So, the same reason that I got there was through love and being with, my wife at the time. It just went horribly wrong. I mean, that lovely British accent and all of the trappings that come with the idyllic lifestyle in a village in North Yorkshire just went, and it became my hell. So I was asked to take over Michael Jackson crew chief role, which wasn't really my thing, but it got me back into a tour and getting my reputation back. A
huge tour as well, presumed. I mean, the biggest star. I mean, we spoke about, I spoke about Elvis earlier. There's not really, I think Michael Jackson might be the only comparable size star to Elvis ever. I mean, huge.
Well, I'll tell you what, Garth Brooks. I mean, I didn't work with Garth Brooks, but get this as a fact, I probably know or don't know, sold more records than the Beatles.
I'm aware of this, as we were saying before we started recording. My girlfriend's American, and she knows about Garth Brooks and Hootie and the Blowfish and Matchbox 20 and, a lot of these artists, Shania Twain, which just have never really translated to the UK. And you look at the stats for someone like Garth Brooks, who I'm aware of, and it's insane. I mean, I couldn't name you a song. I couldn't name you a single song, but
I got friends in low places.
I know that song, yeah. But I mean, in terms of sitting down and going, I'm aware that this is the big Garth Brooks album. I mean,
huge.
I know Sgt. Pepper's a bit better than I know any of his material, to be honest. But that's insane. But So Michael Jackson, again, well, it's a hot potato these days, Michael Jackson, isn't it? But how was that as a tour? I mean, that feels like to me it would be. Did you ever get to see Michael, or was it just a very...
Well, it was weird. I got to tell you. It was just like so weird because, we had kind of meetings to teach us and tell us about what this tour was and how I should behave with Michael. And basically, if he comes to you, you look the other way. Oh. You just don't even, acknowledge him, which I think is like, okay, I'm okay with that, but it was just kind of strange in that way. It was just very disjointed. I'm sure that the management and the designers and everything all had, vision, and there's no doubt about the way that it was organized was really good. I'm not saying that it was disorganized. I'm just saying that the connect between working crew and what he was, again, it's another royalty situation.
Yeah.
Wasn't my favorite thing to do, but at least it got me back into America and working again. And believe it or not, after 10 years, my reputation was still somewhat intact.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah,
I mean,
who knew?
Yeah, but that's great. And I was, still on the sort of the Jackson thing. How did you? I mean, you must have been not part of, but aware of or surrounded by some kind of media circus being in that.
Yeah, but again, I was just behind the scenes and really wanted to be. I didn't want any part of.
No, I'm sure.
It rubbing shoulders with any of the band, or I was happy not looking at Michael. I didn't care. I was just happy to be there.
Okay. All right, good. Well, I mean, it's because when we spoke to, the first episode we did, we spoke to Peter Hintz, and he talked about, David Bowie splitting up on stage and the kind of being there at the Hammersmith Apollo and David Bowie split up, and just the maniac audience reaction and trying to do your job as people screech and scream and cry and go insane around you. And to me, that feels like just making your job far more difficult. I mean, you talk about a crew, and I guess people don't really think about it, but that so much must go into a Michael Jackson show, and so many professional people like yourself must be employed to make that machine tick and to make those, to keep those gears very oily. And yet, I just can't imagine how insane everything surrounding it must be, and how much of a distraction that would be.
That's the reason why I want to be a backstage guy and not dealing with all of that, because there's so many hangers-on. There's so many people who want to have a piece of whatever it is they think they're going to get by touching and talking to the rock star and stuff like that. I'm just so over, people. Oh, can you get me an autograph? I work with Ariel Speedwagon now, and can I get an autograph? Can I have a picture with the band or something like that? No. I don't care. And I'm nice to them, but the answer is no. I don't really have time to deal with that kind of thing.
Fair. Okay. One of the things you did do that I noticed as well, kind of a few years after that, was working in Hollywood as the lighting designer stroke director on the film Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston, which is, I believe, based on Tim Ripper Owens, who became the frontman of Judas Priest for a while after being in a Judas Priest tribute band. That seems like it would be an interesting thing to have done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was one of the best experiences of my life, that. Really?
Okay. Why so?
Well, because it involved rock and roll and the film worlds coming together. And being able to bridge that gap. I mean, I got the attention of the director. I think it was Stephen Herrick who directed it. Yeah. And he was trying to put together scenes about what Road Crew would be doing at different times. I mean, you've seen the movie? I've seen the movie. I saw it at the cinema, yes, back in the day. Yes. Yeah, but, all the concert scenes there, I did those. Right. All the, and the design actually was done by the production designer, Maine Burke. And Maine and I became very good friends. But he modeled that whole back wall of aircraft landing lights based on the show that I did with Motley Crue with the wall of lights behind it, which was real interesting because he came to the company I was working with and described the wall that he wanted. He goes, yeah, Motley Crue had it, and they had Crue spelled out, and then they went and they had girls spelled out, and I just looked at him. I go, I did that. You're talking to the guy. So, I mean, that's pretty much how I landed that.
Yeah.
That whole gig.
Wow.
But it was very cool to work with film crews and, take after take and designing that system for the movie. Very, very cool.
How did you feel about the movie after you saw it?
Oh, I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's a formula movie, but Timothy, what's the guy? Alphonse, who's the road manager that played the road manager?
Timothy Olyphant.
Thank you.
Yes.
Timothy Olyphant.
That's the
Brilliant.
guy, yeah.
I mean, the scenes where Jennifer Aniston comes into the hotel and goes up the elevator and stuff, that was shot at a hotel in Los Angeles called the Biltmore. Mm-hmm. But I have a funny story for Jennifer Aniston.
Okay. I never thought we'd hear that on this podcast, I got to be honest, but go for it. Absolutely go for it. This is really cool. And I have to tell you that this is a secondhand story, but I can tell it pretty good. We did a scene. I think you'll remember the scene was outdoors, and it was the band prior to them like really making it big. And they had the little cauldrons on stage, and all of the lights in the back were, guess what? Coffee cans. Right. Those were real coffee cans that were wired up just for that scene. But it was done in an industrial park, in South Los Angeles. It was an old derelict industrial park, but it was completely set up for the movie. Yeah.
And there were two follow spots, one on each tower, the existing towers that they hoisted these things up there, and the two guys that were up there. And the LD who I got to run that particular thing, and I got him to do it because we were setting up in the sports arena, working that angle. Mm-hmm. So I went down there, set everything up, then I went to the sports arena. This guy, Brett, told me, he goes, the two follow spots saw Jennifer Aniston sit next to him, and they said, over the intercom, the headset goes, I'll bet you $5 that you don't have enough balls to put your hand on Jennifer Aniston's leg.
Right.
So he did it. He put his hand on Jennifer Aniston's leg, and then at that point he could see two $5 bills float down from the columns.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, Jennifer Aniston comes to him and says to him, I heard about the bet. She goes, but I would have bet 20.
Oh, wow. It's good to see Jennifer Aniston. I was going to say, I don't know how much interaction you had with Jennifer Aniston and Mark Wahlberg, but they're two actors who feel like they would be nice people, I think.
I mean, I was there bending over. I was doing something out at the front of the house and stuff, and I turned around and I saw Jennifer Aniston, and super hot. I just go, hello.
Yeah, that's cool. Good. Yeah. Before we kind of move on towards the end, I mean, one of the things you're working on now, I want to talk about something you're working on now. I know you're involved in both the Frank Zappa and the Ronnie James Dio hologram tours that are kind of either have taken place or are taking place. Obviously in certain parts of the world they've already been going. I know you work with, obviously we spoke about Frank Zappa a little bit earlier. I know you said you worked with Ronnie. I know you worked with Ronnie James Dio for a long time. Everyone who's into heavy metal, I think, was very, very, very sad when Ronnie passed away. Like a genuine legend, and always came across in interviews as, one of the absolutely most genuinely lovely men. What was it like working with Ronnie, and what kind of warm memories do you have of him as a person?
I have many.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I have many warm memories. First of all, if you think about Elton John and what I was saying to you about him saying to me, just go for it. It's your experience and your knowledge, and just do what you're going to do. Where Ronnie and I had a real tight collaboration. He loved to be involved with the aspect of backstage with creating stage sets, and he's the first person that came to me and said, "You're no longer going to be on the crew," because I was doing everything. And he goes, "You come into the dressing room with me after the shows. Let's talk about it." And we did that every night.
Wow.
It was cool. I mean, from lighting cues, and when I stand up and point my finger at the audience, I'm going to go all the way across the front of the stage. I want you to follow that with the light on the audience. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, those stage sets were all very much with his influence. And I think one of the warmest stories that I have about him is when I came back from England, and I was completely broke. And so I called my friend who lives in Moorpark, California, and I slept on his hide-a-bed in his garage for a couple of nights. And Ronnie learned of this and called me and said, "I'm coming to get you." Oh. So he drove to Moorpark. I went to his house, which was basically, it's a little castle in Encino. This thing was a beautiful home. Floors imported from France and Gothic windows and a bar from a pub in England that had closed. I mean, it was totally tricked out.
Yeah.
And I stayed there with him for 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I
mean, he's... I saw Heaven and Hell once, obviously towards the end of you know, Ronnie's life, and phenomenal singer, obviously. You know, one of the great voices in metal.
I saw a USA Today. It was USA Today poll, or somehow they figured out the top 20 singers
right,
ever.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was number 19, right above Mariah Carey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he could do that. He could belt. He didn't even have to warm up. He would just come and belt that stuff out. You know?
Yeah. Well, love it. And I actually, I interviewed Wendy Dio. I interviewed his wife a few years ago, and the tribute album came out for Ronnie. And again, she seemed like a really lovely person. And yeah, it's not been a great decade for the people that we've lost in this industry. And one of the things, I mean, obviously, as I was going to speak to you about, the hologram tour and the kind of the popularity of that has started to grow. Do you think that will continue to be a thing? I mean, I have to say, I feel quite drawn on the idea. Do you know what I mean? I there's part of me that thinks if I go and see somebody live, I kind of want to see it live. And as much as I would like to see those people, you know, that's gone. And yeah, I don't know quite how I feel about it. So convince me, I guess.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people are ambivalent about the idea. There is a lot of social media comments. Let him rest in peace. Let him, you know, why are you doing this? The reason is because the music is timeless.
Yeah.
His voice shall be remembered, hopefully forever, ever and ever. I think one of the things that I noticed with the hologram is looking at the expressions of the people who did attend and what they got out of it. And to me, it was a slam dunk of whether or not this is a good idea or it's not a good idea. Because I had people coming up to me and saying the emotion that they had and what they experienced. You can see the image. You can look at it and know that it's not him. But with a live band and a live track of his voice, all bets are off. As soon as that voice comes over the PA and it's mixed with the live band, the feeling is just explosive. And you're drawn into all the memories that you had growing up listening to this stuff in the first place. And the songs and how they made you feel then, which is why, by the way, I think classic rock bands are still going strong now because of that feeling, that memory that people carry when they were a much younger, freer person than they are now. They can go there and just let their cares and worries go away.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The idea there are plenty of artists that that I never got the chance to see, that I feel that I would love to experience those songs live. I do feel like I would love to experience some sort of way of, and if that's the closest that we have, then and obviously for someone like Ronnie or for Frank Zappa, it absolutely is. If we had a Jimi Hendrix hologram, like my God, to experience the songs of Jimi Hendrix in a live environment with people near me and with a live band, and to actually see that happen in front of your face and to kind of experience, I think it's a very, very tempting thing to do. And I wonder how far what I was going to ask you was, how popular do you see this kind of being as the years progress?
I think as the technology improves, we really started this in the pioneering stages of taking technology to that realm where we could produce such a show.
Yeah.
But it's improving all of the time. So, I'm working at a project now that I can't really disclose, but I can say that we're using filming in an augmented reality sense and being able to project that so that you can be put into different environments within a staged environment with this person, instead of looking like they're on a screen or projection screen or in a box or anything like that, will actually look like they're floating.
Right.
That they can come out and float and play just like the person. It's coming. That's all I'm saying. It's coming, and these sorts of things are being developed more and more. And I think once that technology is there and people start to get that it's now becoming more of a spectacular, that they can see their beloved artists perform again. And if it's done right, and it's done with the right audio, and it's done with the right visuals, I'm not saying they're not going to be able to tell, but they certainly will be entranced by these images and what can be done. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly intrigued, Paul. I mean, as a man who's been, involved in this industry for a very, very long time, it's interesting to hear you talk about it, and it's it's certainly an intriguing thought, and it's amazing. I guess if you thought to go back to that 16-year-old kid who was painting pineapple cans to now be at the very sort of forefront of cutting edge technology within the world of kind of live music is like I said at the start, that's some journey you've been on.
Well, I keep trying. Yeah. That's the whole thing. You just got to get up every day and do the very best that you can, and wherever that leads you.
Well, before we go, one thing we always do before we end up is ask you your very best and very worst day on the job. So pick whichever one you want to start with. What's the worst day you've ever had on the job, but then the very best day as well?
I probably had as many bad days as I've had good ones. I don't know. There's a lot of worse ones, but I think the worst ones come from being inexperienced and not knowing how to deal with certain situations. Those are the worst ones. And, if you put yourself in a position and you can't deliver it, things can go horribly wrong. And there was this show years ago. I used to do a lot of R&B bands, and I did Rick James.
Nice.
LTD. And we're out with Cameo and the Commodores. There was a whole big trend there for a while. Yeah,
sure.
But I was with a group called New Birth. New Birth were absolutely huge. And I was sent, I think I was on the Zappa tour at the time, and I was sent down there to make things right. It was a complete mess, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to make it right. I mean, I tried my best, but it was a horrible day in my life. And I think the other thing, I worked for the Carpenters for a while as well.
Okay.
And I pretty much screwed that up. I had a system that was designed by this real famous Broadway designer, and I just thought it was so boring, So I was out there with Richard and Karen Carpenter.
Yeah.
And so I kind of circumvented the normal management thing and got them to sign off on a system. And then when the system was up and we started the tour with that system, the Broadway designer came out and he just lost it on me. Horrible day in my life. You know, I just wanted to crawl up into a hole and never come out.
Right. Okay. But the flip side to that, apart from getting chewed out by the Carpenters manager, what would be the best day? Is there one moment where you've looked at the crowd and looked at your design and gone, wow, that's a bit of me.
I think it would have to be like a surfer that is looking for the perfect wave. You know, all of the stars have to align.
Yeah. And
you get it and you ride it all the way in. And there's a few times where I can say that, honestly, that's happened for me. I think the movie Rockstar we were talking about was one of them. Certainly with the sets that were created with Ronnie James Dio were super satisfying, because what getting with an artist does for a designer is pushes the limits that you would normally take. Their head is in a completely different orbit in space than a crew guy.
Yeah.
They're thinking about stuff that we would never. And I think Motley Crue, the girls' tour, was pretty fantastic, you know, going in and out. And of course, the top or most prestigious probably would be Elton John. To see my stage design come alive. We did a show in Verona, Italy, for Sky Television. It was a live from Verona, and it was done in one of those old Colosseums.
Oh, lovely.
With, you know, where they used to do, you know, Christians, lions.
Yeah, bad stuff. Yeah.
And I had my lighting console on the platform where that guy was, you know, that gave the thumbs up or down. And all around that whole Colosseum was where you could see the lions' cages and stuff. I mean, it was still all very much imaginable there. But when that went out and it rained quite a bit during the load in, it cleared up for the show, and on the load out, it started raining again. But it was, you know, very satisfying to experience that. That's
amazing. Well, Paul, it's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you. You too.
You've worked with some of the greatest names in music and have shone a light on their talents. If that's not too cheesy a way to end this podcast, I hope it isn't.
It's not cheesy.
but well done for everything you've done. It's a really, really fantastic story, and it's been lovely speaking to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. Well, there you go. That was Paul Dexter talking to me about just every artist ever. I mean, do you know what? I think we have to get Paul back on another time, because we barely scratched the surface of what he's done in his career. It's quite an incredible story, and you know, we could have probably gone on for another hour chatting to him. But I want to say a massive thank you to Paul, and a massive thank you actually to all the guests that we've had on Series 1 of We Are the Road Crew. This is going to be the last episode we do for a little while. We break up for Christmas. So big thank to Paul. Also big thank you to Peter Hintz, George Baker, Graham Wright, Andy Corrigan, Steve Carr and Hannah Broderick, all of the people that we've had previously on the show. Big thank you to the guys at Factory Studios in London who allow me to record here, to Emma Grimmer who does our artwork. Big thank you to you as well for doing that, and thank you to you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the 7 episodes that have come out so far and what has been this first season of We Are the Road Crew. I hope you have a lovely Christmas and New Year break and have some much needed rest. I'm certainly going to have some much needed rest. Please do leave a review if you want to give us a little present at this festive time of year. A little review on your iTunes, or you know, maybe a little retweet if you find us on Twitter at Road Crew Pod. Maybe tag us in on something on Facebook and say, hey, this podcast is great. And, you know, a few more ears on the podcast, very, very much would be appreciated if you could help us out with that. But, yes, we will see you another day for another series of We Are the Road Crew. It'll be Series 2 coming up before you know it. But for now, for a little while, thank you so much.